What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we need to talk about Gorr the God Butcher. And here's the reason why. Word has reached my ears that people are angry because Gorr the God Butcher has a nose and doesn't have tentacles on his head. Now, barring their weird fetish when it comes to tentacles, I can understand to a degree that he's not exactly comic book accurate. I grew out of that years ago, right? Years ago, I grew beyond this idea that the characters have to be comic book accurate. I just love seeing them on the silver screen. But here's the thing, man. Who cares? No one cares. It doesn't matter. There's not going to be a moment in this movie, there's not going to be a time when Thor and Gorr are fighting for the first time and Gorr beats the hell out of him, and I'll tell you exactly how I know that's gonna happen here in a minute. But there's not gonna be a moment in that fight scene when anyone is sitting in the movie theater and it's like, God, this fight scene's amazing. But you know what would make it better? If Gorr didn't have a nose and had tentacles on his head. No one's gonna be saying that, right? No one's gonna be writing a review for the New York Times and saying, yeah, man, Thor God of Thunder, phenomenal movie. The characters, it was great seeing it all happen. Thor teaming up with the Guardians of the Galaxy. I loved seeing him in his Ravager outfit. Gorr's one of the most amazing and intriguing villains the MCU has introduced so far. But he really should have not had a nose and had tentacles on his head. No one's gonna be saying that, right? If you are angry about this, it's because you're looking for a reason to be mad. That's literally the only reason anybody would be pissed off about this. The kind of people who are angry about this are the kind of people who go to a movie theater and buy a movie ticket, and they get an assigned seat, which is all the way back in the left-hand corner with a view that sucks and the sound quality is absolute garbage. And they get into the theater and the movie starts and they realize there's no one in that theater, but they stay there anyway because that's their assigned seat and that's where they're supposed to sit, right? People who can't think outside the box. Most all reasonable human beings would just move to the middle of the movie theater where you get the best view and you get the best sound. But these kind of people would not. Let me tell you something, man. What really matters when it comes to this is not tentacles and a lack of a nose, right? We're not trying to turn Gorr the God Butcher into Voldemort. The guy doesn't need to be 100% comic book accurate. What matters here, and the comic book accuracy that needs to happen in this movie, is Gorr beating the hell out of Thor. Let me tell you something, man. The first time these two fought, Gorr just straight up clapped them cheeks, son. Just clapped them cheeks. I mean, just clapping them cheeks, right? And we're not talking about Black Bolt getting his cheeks clapped by Wanda because Black Bolt sucks. We're talking about just clapping, son. I mean, just clapping those cheeks. It was amazing to watch that happen, man. I mean, man, it was a beating. And Thor did what he could, right? But Gorr the God Butcher was like, man, son, you better come strong. Literally just took it to him, stabbed him, beat him within an inch of his life, right? Thor's standing there in the face of Gorr, eye all swole up, just knots and bruises all over. I mean, the guy's head looks like a character from a Bugs Bunny cartoon, right? Just all in taps on his head, right? Just lumps, divots, right? Guy looked like a golf course. So the guy got absolutely crushed, right? Absolutely destroyed. Calls down the thunder, injures Gorr. Gorr has to retreat. Had he not done that, Thor would have been a dead man, right? Now, here's the craziness of it, right? It was one thing to see Gorr just absolutely just wreck Thor. It was another to see him wreck 3 Thors at the same time, son. That's what Gorr did, man. It was absolutely nuts. Quite literally, right? It's one of the craziest things. Quite literally, there is a point in this comic when you get, or at least in the storyline, you get Thor from the past who couldn't lift Mjolnir. He was the one that initially fought Gorr and just got those cheeks clapped, right? Clapping like he's clapping for a high school basketball team, right? Just clapping them cheeks, right? Just getting absolutely crushed. Then you had Thor from the present day, right? Who did have the power to lift, or had the ability to lift Mjolnir. Then you had Thor in the far-flung future, right? All-Father Thor with the power of the Odin Force. They all just got absolutely crushed by Gorr. Just absolutely crushed by this guy. It took present-day Thor wielding 2 hammers, right? 2 Mjolnirs, and the all-black Necro Sword to defeat Gorr. And even then, he couldn't fully defeat him. But it was crazy, man. It was absolutely nuts. That kind of stuff needs to be comic book accurate, right? Maybe not necessarily the whole, Thor in the future and Thor in the present and all that kind of stuff. But I can tell you this, man. You're probably going to see Jane Foster Thor team up with Odin's son to face off against Gorr, and he's gonna wreck them both. He's gonna absolutely crush them both. Like, you're literally gonna watch that fight, and you're gonna be like, man, these guys never even had a chance. And it's like, nope. Right? Like, this ain't Karate Kid, son, right? Gorr swept that leg, and it was curtains. Like, that's all it was, man. Drapes. Yeah, that's literally all it was. But that's what needs to be comic book accurate in this movie. Now, here's the other thing too, right? Gorr's being played by Christian Bale. This guy is legitimately one of the single greatest actors to ever exist in Hollywood. Like, quite literally, the guy's phenomenal, devotes himself entirely to the character. Now, I'm not saying that Christian Bale basically hid away from the sun for 5 years in order to give himself that pale skin. I'm just saying, Christian Bale is an amazing actor, and to see him play this character of Gorr, oh, it's gonna be absolutely phenomenal. The one thing that I don't want, because I don't care about a nose and tentacles, the one thing that I don't want to see in this movie, I don't want to see them send Gorr the God Butcher the way they normally do when it comes to villains, right? Like, Gorr the God Butcher has some cool moments, and then with the power of hope and the plot itself, Jane Foster and Odin's son managed to defeat Gorr. I don't want to see that, man. This is legitimately one of those movies where I kind of want to see the bad guy win. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I love the character of Gorr that much, right? Just the development was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, that villain was cool. It's one of those funny things. At no point did his nose or his lack of nose and tentacles on his head have anything to do with his character development, right? I am Gorr, the source of my power is my tentacles. That's not the case, right? That's not the case, right? So again, like, I'm excited for this movie, man. I am hyped for this movie, more so because I'm ready to just watch Thor get crushed. And I don't mean like crushed, like, well, he fights a good fight and like some stuff happens. No, I mean like just watch Thor get wrecked in a way that we've never seen Thor get wrecked before. Just get absolutely crushed. Because here's the thing that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has to establish here, right? It's one of the most important things they have to establish. We've seen Thor in some cool fights. It would have been more interesting if we'd seen Thor face off against like Thanos, right? Like the way the Incredible Hulk did and get wrecked by Thanos. But what they have to establish here is that Thor can be readily beaten by people out there who are just more capable than he is for a variety of different reasons. And I'm not talking about like, Thanos and his forces overpowering Thor and Loki on their ship. No, I'm just talking about one guy who's just on a crusade to kill gods, and that's it. Right? Literally, the guy's just petty as hell. He's got a vendetta, and it's just like, gods have to die. And that's the end of it, right? Like, that's literally the end of it. And there's nothing more to it than that. It has to just be something that simple, not some guy like Thanos who is on a whole different level. Because here's the thing, Gorr by himself, you take away the Necro Sword, Gorr is just a dude. Right? He's just like a guy who's pissed off at the world. He's like every 15-year-old ever, right? Just young, full of angst, smoking cigarettes, listening to The Cure, mad because the girl he likes in biology class doesn't like him back, right? That's basically what he is, right? At the end of the day, I mean, not the whole girl in biology class, but like, that's basically the whole thing. Granted, he's got a legitimate beef, right? The guy comes from a world where he lost his whole family, right? And the gods that they pray to just ignored him all the time. So the guy's got a legitimate reason to be upset. But without having the Necro Sword, dude's got nothing, right? He's like people on Twitter. He's just got harsh language and nothing else. But you put that Necro Sword in his hands, son, man, you better believe he's going to take you for a ride on the pain train. And that's exactly what he does. That's exactly what he does. But having somebody like that, with Thanos, it was a whole different kettle of beans, right? We all knew, just as a comic book reader or any number of things, you knew that like Thanos just by himself, without the Infinity Gauntlet, was enough to just absolutely wreck the Incredible Hulk or Thor or any of those guys. Gorr is not. And the guy even looks small, right? Like you look at him in the trailer and it's just like, damn, this dude's tiny, man. Like, good God, Gorr, like, eat something, son. Like, that's, go to the gym, lift some weights, put some muscle on, like something along those lines. But you put that Necro Sword in his hand, it's drapes, it's curtains. And I'm excited to see how that unfolds, right? So with that being said, guys, here's the thing. I also want to do a video on Jane Foster at some point because I love Jane Foster Thor and people are kind of pissed off about Jane Foster Thor and I don't understand why because I feel like they're just looking for a reason to be angry too. But I love Jane Foster Thor, man. I've always loved Jane Foster Thor. And I'll tell you right now, I think Jane Foster is a more interesting Thor than Thor was, right? Than Odin's son was. Like, the only, like she had great character development, and she had great stories, and she did some awesome stuff. Now she's a Valkyrie. Quite literally, Marvel just shuffled her off to the cornfields and just like, you go to the cornfields because nobody likes you anymore, right? You're not Thor, and nobody cares about Jane Foster when she's just a nurse in a hospital somewhere. So like, you go do your thing. But they'll probably end up killing her off at the end of this movie, to be honest. You know, they'll probably just end up writing her out. That'll be the end of Jane. I think Thor is gonna die too, to be honest. Like, I think this will be the end of Odin's son. I don't know if that's gonna be the case or not, but regardless, I'm excited to see Gorr, right? So stop being pissed off over things that don't matter, enjoy the ride, and when you get into the movie theater, just remember, once you walk out, ask yourself the question, at what point did you ever say the fight between Thor and Gorr would have been better if Gorr had a nose, or didn't have a nose, and had tentacles on his face, or on his head, right? Like, if you don't find yourself asking that, I guess if you do find yourself asking the question, okay, cool, I guess kudos to you, whatever. But if you don't find yourself asking that question, exactly, I was right. No one cares. It doesn't matter. So with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.